conversation with.
Hi everyone, I'm Nariman this end, and it's my privilege and honor to have Cherish Marshall with me here today. Hi Cherish, thank you for coming.
Thank
And
you. Thank you for having me.
Cherish is a fellow batchmate of mine from the master's course as well. So Cherish basically has a master's in fine arts from the University of Arts London, and she lives and works in Essex. Her work dwells into the darker side of the human experience. We're trapped in conscious awareness, which inflicts upon us the understanding of our own suffering with painful clarity. It is this understanding and the joyless moments that mold us into the person we become and lead us down the path that we never dreamt we would follow. Cherish's work offers a space for those subjects to transform from the quiet pondering in the abyss of our minds and into poignant and somber conversation. She has exhibited her work across the UK and Amsterdam. In 2018, she created work for the Freud Museum, inspired by Freud's claim that if it's not one thing, it's your mother. She created an honest piece, illustrating the declining relationship between herself and her own mother. By opening up this dialogue, the audience then would expose their own turmoil. In turn, this made Cherish's work strive a balance between revealing a personal side as well as a detached approach that allows the audience to pull their own reality into it. In 2017, she co founded the Uncovered Collective. The collective puts on exhibits in unusual spaces to let artists exhibit their work out of the Whitehall experience. Hi, Cherish. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, like I said, you've been born, brought up, work, everything in Essex. So, what made you go into the University of Gloucester first for your masters and then pick University of Arts London for your masters? Like, was there any, Gloucester for your bachelor's and then University of
Yep.
Arts London for your masters? Was there any thought process behind it, or was it just?
So the University of Gloucestershire came out of random, really, because my idea was to actually study in London. But when I went to the University of Gloucestershire, what's in the campus in Cheltenham, I just loved the space. I loved the environment, and actually that really helped me to grow. Unfortunately, with London, as much as you get the galleries, you get such great networking, the studio spaces can be quite small. So during my BA, to have such a big space to really explore and create was just fantastic. However, I still wanted that need of studying in London. So going to UAL, in Wimbledon, it really helped me refine my practice and really narrow in what I wanted to achieve as an artist. So why Cheltenham gave me the room to explore, Wimbledon gave me the room to really focus and home in everything I wanted.
That's amazing. Thanks. And during COVID, I think, we were discussing this just before the interview as well. Mental health issues for everyone has become such a pressing subject and issue, especially during COVID. Do you think this has not only impacted you personally, of course, because it's impacted everyone, but somehow it's impacted your work? Has it had any sort of influence on your work as well?
It's definitely had an influence on my work. One, the way I work, you're trapped in a house essentially. You can't escape. I would go to galleries, I'd meet other artists to kind of get this whole, ideas and all these things running around. But then you're locked into your own mental mindset, and it's just that space. So it definitely made me really reflect more. But it also made me look into more of the news and the outside world that little bit more. Where I was so much in this creative bubble, I came out of this bubble and focused on the world around me that little bit more. When you're hearing about domestic violence on the rise, children, unfortunately being physically abused, it's quite scary. And then you see this class divide as well. That's how my practice has now gone. It's gone into these avenues that I was already exploring, but more in depth.
So what would you like to, what is your take on the class divide, especially in the United Kingdom? And like you said, I think because you've been dwelling into like world news and that a lot more, what would you have to say about the class divide in the UK? And what do you think, and how do you think you would address this issue? And how do you think we as artists can also help to bring this issue into, say, the limelight a little more?
So I have my own issues with the class divide, mainly because when I'm in Essex, that's a very working class area, especially in Chelmsford, my hometown. And then when I moved to Cheltenham, it's very much a middle and upper class, and you saw a distinctive change. And to me, that really gave me this moment of, oh, something's different here. So now you come back to the COVID times, and there was this whole argument about the free school dinners. And that really, it was mainly that really made me realise that there's too much of a divide. When you're questioning whether to feed a child or let them starve, that's not right, and that shows a clear divide. You can see this as well. Owen Jones wrote a brilliant book called Chav, and how the media portray the class as well. You know, you get people, you have this idea of Clacton-on-Sea, and town in Essex, unfortunately, is slowly going down in the ranks because of not having as much funding. But you get that instant judgment and that stereotype, and it's like, it's almost we become like these rats, and that shouldn't be the way. At the end of the day, we are still human, and there's many working class people that have succeeded great success. One of them in the art world is Grayson Perry, who in fact is an Essex artist as well. So it's kind of how my work's now going, is this case of how did we get to this point where the media really portrayed the working class in this manner? Why are we so fixated on this? And should there be more government policies to make it a bit more well-rounded and more equal? And now, of course, in the UK, I'm very lucky in many ways. I'm not going to deny the UK is a brilliant place in many ways, but there still is room for improvement when it comes to things like this. Children shouldn't starve no matter where in the world. So in a country that is so rich and vibrant, why is that still the case? So, yeah.
And what do you think the government can really do in terms of just implementing policies? And yeah, and not only that, but how do you think, are you willing to put your work out there publicly, maybe like become a street artist, or are you trying to get more people involved, meaning sucked into your art through exhibits, or are you planning to go out there and talk about people or political activism, or it's just through your artwork per se?
It's mainly through my artwork and through the awareness. So from one of my works was dinner, Who Told You Lunch Can Be Free? It talks about there's such a divide of, on average, it's roughly about £2.50 to feed a child. However, our politicians can have a £25 waiver to get dinner if they're out of their constituency. £25 to £2.50, that's ridiculous. So by just showing these little things helps create a bigger picture. And I would love to do more talks on this. I would love to make more of an impact. It's just finding avenues and ways to do so. So at the moment, it is very, very personal, and it's my artwork, but it doesn't mean it can't be expanded into more.
No, that's great. And you also, I mean, I know a lot of your art comes from your personal experiences. And it's so great that you're willing to share these and talk about these, because I know a lot of people aren't today, especially.
Mm.
Do you find that talking about your own personal experiences in your art has been therapeutic in a way for you? And like you said, I think even in your bio, you had told me that like through talking about turbulent experience that you've had, other people have actually approached you with their issues. And that's so great. It's like you can always like come together and like, no, I won't say heal together, but the fact that you're being able to talk about it openly is fantastic. So has this helped you in any way in terms of personal development, in terms of your trajectory as an artist, in terms of your career? How has it benefited you?
So I've definitely been on a journey through all of this. So I've always delved in issues of mental health and suicide, things like quite dark subjects, but I always kept it quite distant from myself. And it wasn't until, as the Freud piece, that I really started to allow other people into my world. And yes, there is this cliche of, art isn't therapy and yada yada, but in many ways it can be. Having that open border as such and allowing people to see your side and then you're able to see theirs, it expands out your practice more. And as we know, during COVID, We are people, we love people, people love people, and we want human connection. By having that human connection and allowing that to be open in my artwork shows such a strength as well, especially in these really dark turmoil moments. So it's me, it has really helped me progress as an artist, because emotionally it's made me stronger, but also it's just made me, once again, I keep saying the word, but it's made me more focused and realise what issues I really need to be talking about and what needs to be done so these issues don't happen. As I say, I talk about very dark issues like suicide. Do we need to have these conversations about suicide so there's less of a suicidal rate? I know it's not as simple as that. There's a whole timeline. But by opening up that discussion, does it help and does it break the ice to make, the issue less bad in a way?
Mm. No, that makes complete sense to me.
Mm.
Also, have you found that you've helped others that are maybe grappling with the same sort of just thoughts, or if they have any sort of dark thoughts? And do you find that there are a lot more people out there now that are actually coming up and speaking about mental health issues now that you've opened up the avenue for yourself?
I think I've definitely had more discussions. I will never say I'm a helper, like I've helped them, because we, as you said, we kind of heal with each
Yeah,
other.
exactly, absolutely.
So it's never, one-sided. It's definitely back and forth. And yeah, I have definitely noticed people opening more up to me. And with that, actually has got more interesting projects because of it. I'm able to bounce off other artists, and I would love to do more exhibits about that as well, where I can almost show, in a horrible way, but show people's trauma, because by showing other people's trauma, you're allowing all these other people in that didn't feel they're strong enough to show it, or open themselves up to other people.
How did you finally, like, just, I mean, now we're backtracking, but how did
Yes,
you
go for it.
get into like the art space? Like, what was your inclination or your beginning, or was it some sort of something in school, or was it something in college where you knew this is it? Like, this is the pivotal moment,
um
that this is something
no
you want to do in your life.
no, I would say I've always been creative. All kids are, aren't they, in some way? They're always making some art project and showing it to mum, like, look mum, what I've done this week. But I was very fortunate with my father. At age 8, he did give me oil paints. Now, most people wouldn't give their child oil paints at age 8. So fair play on my dad on that one. Amazing. But then I started crawling up and up within the arts. And I did have other avenues I could go down. But the arts never really ran away. And I think, like yourself, it's this thing if you've got to make, you've got to create. And it's no longer a choice, it's just a way of living. In a very cheesy way, don't get me wrong, but it is. And I did have doubts. I had massive amounts of doubts, especially in Cheltenham. But I think one thing that really stood out to me, and it still does, Grayson Perry wrote a book called Playing to the Gallery. And there's a quote on the back, and it says, it's Grayson Perry says, and for I, a transvestite potter from Essex, was accepted into the art world. And it's like, well, yeah, if a transvestite potter from Essex can do it, why can't I? And I think that's what we need to sometimes think is, why can't I? And that's where I got hooked. That's where the art world took me over and was like, right, you're here and you're never leaving. So,
That's so nice. And apart from Grayson Perry, do you have any other sort of inspirations or role models? Anybody?
so I always loved Dali. Don't get me wrong. He can be a bit, very money orientated. Don't get me wrong. But I always will have a soft spot for Dali. But I think it's quite obvious. And I have been, said many times that my work's very much like Tracy Emin. But Tracy Emin is fantastic. She's probably one of the first artists to really open up with such dark issues. Even like with her like a mini documentary about her abortion. You see things about her artwork, about her mum and all this jazz. And so Tracy Emin, why we do kind of dance on the same lines, she's an inspiration to me.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah. And was there anything in particular that you found that you learned from your master's course? Also, has it changed the way that you want to sort of conduct your career in a sense?
Mm.
And like, what were your learnings from it? And also, would you encourage, say, young people who are in the arts to take up a master's course? Do you feel like it's helped you in any sense? I know it's a very individualistic question, because I mean, it's each to their own, of course, always. But how do you
Mm.
feel you've grown from it, or if it's helped you at all? If it has, yeah.
So it definitely helped me, because I always had the mindset I would do a master's after my BA. I took a year out, and I went into the master's to really home in what I was trying to say, and that done it for me perfectly. However, on another note, professionally, it's helped me in many ways as well. By co-founding the Uncover Collective, I managed to get this community of artists to then work together. And on that note, I'll always be grateful for the masters for that as well. And it's also just getting that networking and that connection. I know there's very much cheaper ways to get those networking things. Don't get me wrong, you don't need a shiny bit of paper, but the people I've met there have helped me expand my practice so much. So I would say if people are looking to do a master's, definitely look in and do it, because I do think you learn so much and you grow alongside your fellow students as well.
So, like you just said, because you grow alongside your fellow students and it's about the community, let's talk a little about your venture, the Uncovered Collective, which you started while you were in your master's course.
Mhm.
How important do you think it is for artists to not only collaborate with other artists, but maybe showcase with them? And how do you think that these experiences have sort of helped you grow individualistically and as an artist?
Mm. I think sometimes, and just as a thing that I've seen and on a personal note, we can be quite self-indulgent as artists. We can be very much like, look at my work, isn't it great? And it's like, actually hone that back a bit and realise that your work can still look great and even better alongside another artist. So with the Uncover Collective, by having that opportunity to do that, it just opened up so many more worlds than we expected. As you know, you was part of the first one, Postopia, and that was a fantastic space. And it really opened up to how art can also be viewed. Because on our course, we was also shown about, the white wall galleries and things like that. But if you take it into a whole new space and transport it, the artwork's got a whole new narrative. But on the side of collaborating with other artists, it's something that I really think other artists should do. Whether it is making an artwork alongside another artist, or if it is just exhibiting and all of this jazz. As I say, we can get so self-indulgent and think I'm great and just look at me, when in fact your work can speak so much better alongside another artist and having that narrative bounce off each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And so, lastly, I mean, I'd also like to ask you, like you said, I mean, you're talking about self-indulgence, but I mean, give it a go anyways. What would be your goal? As
I know,
just doing it yourself, like, yeah.
I know, and all about me again. No, so my goal is just to keep making. Once again, this is going to be a very, very cheesy answer, but for me personally, I don't make and I don't create something in me that just goes all wrong, and I almost kind of recoil and start to almost lose myself. So my goal as an artist is just to keep making and keep becoming a better artist as I go along, and delving into these more darker situations and almost get a bit more political. Something that I try to avoid, because politics can get very angry. So I try and avoid it, but it's actually something that I do need to go full throttle into, because with that, I think there can be change that needs to be made.
That's so nice, though. Yeah. And lastly, do you have any inspirational words for the younger generation that perhaps wants to come into art? What would you like to tell them? And what like how what keeps you going, and what would you like to tell them to keep going at it, because we all know it's not easy at all? So what keeps you going, and what inspirational words can you give the younger generation who wants to enter into the arts? We are the younger generation, but younger than
You
us.
know, bit younger as well.
Yeah.
I will say, from just my point of view, I came from not the best, best background, wealth and all that jazz. and that can be a challenge in itself with the arts. But don't give up. It's, if you love doing something, keep doing it. Life's very short, and even at our age, as we say, we are still quite a young generation, but even at our age, time is so fleeting and it goes by just like that. Don't look back on your life and go, I should have done that. It's easy to have regrets, but why not just give it a go? You never know what can happen. Happiness is the most important thing that you need as a person. And if art does that for you, then do it. It's going to be hard. Of course it is. But yeah, your happiness is much more important than a 9-to-5 job that gets you a little bit of extra money. There's my little cheesiness, but that's what I think.
Well, thank you. There you have it. Words of inspiration and advice from Cherish.
That's all right.
Thanks, Cherish. Thanks so much for being with us today and taking out your time. Thank
No,
you.
thank you.
And everybody tune into her work. She's an amazing artist, and hopefully you can check her out on Instagram and all these other platforms. So we'll see you soon, and thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.